Preparing to go live. On that note, I believe we are live. So welcome to the Operation Grow Show, Season 5, Episode 32. I hope everybody's doing well. Hey, see Magma's first one in there. Hey, Magma, how you doing, buddy? Yeah. It was potentially going to be a recorded show, but it isn't. It's a live one again. So we'll see how this goes. Hope everybody is doing well. Lefty, buddy, as you sit down, how are things going with you, sir?
Good, man. Busy week. Had my hemp inspector come out this week. That all went well. Just been harvesting a couple of autoflowers and yeah, just getting ready for the big haul this fall. Greenhouse has a lot of really big hemp buds in it. Been taking out a little bit of bud rot here and there. Just they're so big, man. Just not a whole lot you can do. Been pulling the buds apart and doing everything I can to get airflow in there, but I'm only one guy.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's actually a really good, that's one of the challenges with growing outside. Definitely one of them is the you can only control it so much.
Bud rot and worms, man. Bud rot and worms.
Bud rot and worms and caterpillars and other interesting things.
Yeah.
And Raptor, how you doing, sir? How are things going with you?
I'm doing well. Hopefully everyone had a great week. Had a good week. Can't really complain. I am fixing up my truck, so that kind of sucks. It's something that I didn't expect to invest some like my savings in, but hey, needs to be done. I have to get around, got to get to school, got to get groceries, all that good stuff. So yeah, getting that out of the way. Other than that, some good news. I was on Green Bicycles last night, so got to hang out with Pat, really cool guy. Talked a little bit of tissue culture, talked a little bit of fungi, went into some of my methods for growing cannabis, and yeah, it was very fun. He's a cool guy. I especially like that he used to be a science teacher as well. So something about science teachers I always got along with a lot more. There wasn't really a science teacher that wasn't really excited to discuss anything with me. They're always really cool. So it was almost like going back to high school and talking to like one of my science teachers. But yeah, that's the update for me.
Cool. And GMF, sir, how things go with you, buddy?
Yeah, man, can't complain. I'm a fortunate guy. I got feet above ground. I get to hang out with y'all and get my brain bumpy. I'm a lucky man. Just been playing around with my little experiments, trying to figure out what my cloning method is going to be going forward. Well, here, I guess I'll show you guys if you want to see.
Oh, yeah, hang on a second. Let me pin that.
So I started making these little things out of air pots, right? I started cutting up my old air pots and I'm making these little air layering pods, basically. So for little plants, I'm just doing it like this with a tiny little paper clip. And this is just filled with my regular soil. So it only really gets heavy when it gets wet. Other than that, they tend to, they hold themselves up pretty good. And then I came up with a bigger version, this one. So I'm using an old cap from a water jug. It's got a little disc of neoprene in the bottom and a hole. And I cut basically a way to slide it onto the stem. Then I put the layer of air pot material, fill it with soil. And this, I think, is going to be, I'm comparing this basically to running my aero cloners and doing dirt cloning and stuff like that. And honestly, I think in the long run, this seems like it's going to be where it's at.
So that looks like second brain back into gear. That that looks fairly easy to do.
Oh God, crazy easy.
Quickly patent the idea.
It's just a folded piece of air pot. It literally is how I make a pastry bag.
And has it had success yet? I mean, just asking. I mean, is this the first time you're doing it, or no? So you've actually got it running. Okay.
Yeah, I experimented with it ahead of time, just using the cap. So that little white cap, I just filled that with soil, put it on a plant, and I let it grow roots in there. And so far, when I did that at the same time as just one regular, clone taken, rooted into soil, etc., that plant that was air layered is already a mother. Whereas the clone that went with it is still growing into its size to be able to start being a mom. So from what I can see, getting the roots established while it's still quote unquote having its other root system, you get a lot more, at least in my, what I'm seeing is you get a lot more ease of transition between uppotting. You get a lot more speed as far as like not having that lag time where it's getting adjusted to its new environment. You know, really it's not changing environments. You're taking it from soil and putting it in more soil of the exact same stuff. So, you know, thus far I'm liking the idea of air layering and just doing away with separate materials for cloning. You don't.
It
I'm
makes
almost
so much more
envisaging,
sense.
yeah.
Cutting out time.
I'm almost envisaging having like a, you know, a mother plant that's like an octopus with just the branches bent down into 8 pots around it that you then just peg them into the ground, you know, just loop it. And then as soon as they root, you just cut them all off and you've got 8 plants already rooted and ready to
That's
go.
actually what they do with trees.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they take it and then they have a very long tree and then they put it underground. They even, it looks like a dragon going up and down.
Can
Yeah,
you guys see
exactly.
the surface area of this plant right here? Can you see this?
It's trying to throw roots.
Yes, this is one of my crosses. This is one of my PCK Superdog by Deep Chunk. So this didn't happen on earlier versions. Only one version of my earlier PCK did this. So this is the kind of trait I'm looking to pick up from crossing to the Deep Chunk. But this plant doesn't look like Deep Chunk. It's not a photocopy of Deep Chunk, which is nice. Because it has this nice stemming ability now, I've actually been able to double up, and I might even triple up and put another little cloning pod on here. So I'll be able to take a number of branches off of one plant fully rooted. I don't need these clones. I'm gonna end up giving them away to somebody. But.
You know, it's interesting because typically, well, what we would do in horticulture is exactly what you did, but use more plastic. So it's cool. Like, yeah, fabric pots are plastic and it's reused plastic and it's threaded out and everything like that. But it's nice to see that we're not just taking some bags and then wrapping it around or cellophane, whatever of the sort, and just completely isolating it and keeping it from getting any air movement. It seems like the way you did it with the fabric pots are allowing a lot more air exchange, and you're a lot less adaptation to like, oh, now I got to take this and force it into this pot where it's not used to being as constricted for air. Let's say you use a fabric pot, you transplant it like that. It has to adapt a lot more. So yeah, it makes a lot more sense what you're doing. Did you, so I'm wondering if you amended that soil at all, or you just took spent soil, you let it sit in your compost bin or warm compost bin? I don't know.
That's it. All that is, this is a completely unamended run of soil. So every, would be like every 5,
left over.
Right, every 5 or 6 runs, I basically take the root balls, and when I recycle them with everything else, I just don't add any more amendments. I just leave it. And I process all the, you know, spikes, layers, everything that got processed in there that never got finished. Basically, that ends up being for that round. So, and that's all I did was just put my basic soil mix. I added nothing else to it. I added no more aeration. I added no worm castings. Just my basic mix that I use all the time because that's what's already in the bottom of the pot. I kind of want the plant to think it just fell over or something. Like I don't want it to really, in my thinking, I don't want it to really pick up a difference in mediums or anything like that. I want it to see this as consistent environment.
Yeah. And the only thing that's gonna be different, the added on variable, is the amended soil. So it's still the same soil, it still has the biology in there, but it has also the nutrients that it needs to expand and get bigger.
Yeah, can you do this with cocoa? I mean, with cocoa coir, could you do it with that? Does it have to be done with soil?
No, this could be done with any medium that can hold water. Just doing some research. Yeah, anything that can hold water and allows the root space to actually form and that roots. So you could do it with, traditionally it's just done with sphagnum peat moss. If we go back to our Robert Connell Clark, you know, he talks about cloning, you know, using iodine to test for starch levels because his call, it was the amount of carbohydrate in the clone that determined success. So then, he would go through this, but yeah, traditionally, when you air layered, it would be with things like sphagnum peat moss, but I don't see why cocoa wouldn't be an excellent option. Anything light really would be even better than my soil option, but this is what I
I
got.
mean, you
this is
could
what I live in.
technically, use a bit of a Rockwool cube. You could just slice a Rockwool cube and fit it around there,
Yep.
and then just tape it up essentially with some cellophane.
There you go.
And as soon as you see roots hit the side of it, there you go.
I think that's the idea, is it's making roots while it still has other roots. So it's never going to be that stressed for what it needs to do its job, i.e., according to Robert Connell Clark, it's all about carbohydrate content.
Well, then the recommendation that when you transplant will be exactly the same as, because that's kind of what you're doing, is sort of transplanting it on, but all of a sudden onto the source of nutrients and transpiration at least suddenly becomes a lot less. Although it's also going to, I mean, if you're just cutting off the bottom, it will be less because it doesn't have a big rootstock feeding it. So in terms of like environmentally, you almost do need to treat it similar to the early stages still of a young plant, and it's establishing itself, not in maturity, but in fact, like the VPD needs to be low because it needs to still be humid. Don't put too much stress on the roots to give them time. You want its transpiration
rate to be so high that the engine is quote unquote revving too high. You want it to be able to cut along nice and smooth at its own pace.
So crank the humidity up a bit so that it chugs along, it slows down the transpiration rate and give the roots some time to establish themselves.
I like that it's an umbilical cord as well. So you are for sure, like, instead of just cutting it off and then just leaving it in, a more barrel condition. Yeah, just like it's lacking so many things. Boom, you already have something established that's transporting all the nutrients, transporting water, really helping along with photosynthesis as well. You're having everything go right there. But GMF, you were saying something.
Well, there's all kinds of plant advantages, and I think this is why it's a really old technique. Like I said, you go back to the Robert Connell Clark and
established,
old botany books. This was the preferred method. But why I'm really digging it is there's no chemicals, hormones. I'm not having to mess with any kind of rooting agents. I don't need to get anything else other than the stuff I already have. Right? I have soil. That's all I need. Or Pete has cocoa.
There's no IBA. You don't need to get dehydrated aloe vera or all this.
Right. This is called aerocloning. Is that what this is called? Aerocloning.
No, this is layering. I'm
air layering.
Air layering. Right. This is layering. So
one word
is like aerocloning.
Air dash layering.
Yeah, hyphenated. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the whole idea, is I'm using stuff that I already have handy. So I already have the soil. I already have these fabric pots I used to use. So I'm just going to use that equipment. I already have the little paper clips. I already get the 5-gallon water jug. So I have the cap for that. This is all stuff I already have in my garden. And more importantly, it's stuff that's going to constantly get reused. None of this is like a one-time usage thing. It's not like something where I'm going to have to go buy more, cubes at the grocery store or something. This is what I like. Stuff where I'm not having to go buy stuff. This is just me using the materials I have to make what I need.
Yeah, and again, one of the interesting things about this would also be you wouldn't have to switch up your nutrient regime, which I still maintain when you're taking cuttings. You don't really have to switch up your, change the nutrient. It's still the same vegetative nutrient feed that you were giving it all along, because it's not a young plant. It's a mature old plant. So it's not sensitive to the nutrients in that, and it hasn't had to establish itself. And again, here you'd have something that you can be feeding the same nutrients straight off the bat without really having to worry too much about it. Something with more root stimulant in it.
Something, Pete? Just pulling out an old horticulture book that I had from a class and just showing an example.
Go for it.
So let me get that, adjust it here. So as you can see, let me adjust so it's wider. There we go. So we have a couple of different examples of air layering here. This is figure 2A. And you can see the example of just how it's rooting there. And same here, they just took off the substrate that GMF was just mentioning, and you could see it's a little dirty, and yeah.
But if you
Uh,
go back up to that previous one where they showed it pegged into the ground, or
Sure.
this one here, yeah. I mean, yeah,
Bigger
that's
tree.
exactly that sort of how I
Mhm.
was visualizing it, where you could just
Yep,
have this
that's
mother
what-
plant that just feeds out to everything, and then you just stake
100%.
it and then cut them and they're good to go.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, just showing a couple figures. Yeah, this is where I mentioned like, here's like the dragon's back going through
Yeah.
like that, and you just use some, you know, something to hold it down. And you could even, you don't necessarily need to dig. You could just cover it up with like a mound as
Mm.
well. So you don't have to like penetrate
but
anything.
you'd probably need something to just to hold it down so that it doesn't.
Yeah,
That's just it,
exactly.
yeah.
So if you have like raspberry or blackberry canes or raspberry canes, you could do that much easier. Here's some more examples and exactly how GMF was shown. You could literally just take a plastic pot, cut it in half on one side, and then bend it through here. You could see like you just put a bunch of pots on. They gave the example of a tree here. That's how it's traditionally done.
Well,
And
and to me, it seemed just smarter to use the cloth because of weight
you go.
issues. You know, we're talking herbaceous plants. We don't have that kind of stiffness to the stem
Yes.
typically until you're working on, like when I showed the larger
Even
one
if
that had
it's a
the two
light
cups on
plastic
top
pot.
of each other. Right. So being able to switch to those fabrics in kind of just a natural cone shape to hold them on there seemed to work pretty well, even on small plants.
Ooh, this
GMF, do you
cool.
make GMF, do you make any kind of a score mark or anything on the
Nope.
stalk itself where you're gonna wrap it, or do you just go right around the stalk and just leave it?
As from what I've read, when it comes to hardwoods, softwoods, all that stuff, I'm going off my Master Gardener's manual that I've got just from my state extension program. For that, they would say yes, you definitely have to score the outer and get to the xylem, et cetera. But according to them, when it comes to herbaceous plants, which are most of what's done for, you know, greenhouse crops and whatever, they said the book says it's not done. It's not needed. It didn't mention it in that part where it mentioned it in the first two.
I mean, I said
So-
Dave Martin and chat was saying, you know, he's had roots pop out when you've taped up broken branches, just probably maybe from it sweating enough in the area.
Exactly. I think
Uh,
that's it. It's Eliotatic, I think is the name of it, is the technical word for it. But again, you know, go back to Robert Connell Clark. He talks about this. He does one where it's just literally taped up and darkened, because that in and of itself, not being exposed to light, is another thing that triggers that root growth. You know, I hate to keep saying it, but like this book is our oldest book that most of us have access to, and it's got all of this in there. So yeah, you can take advantage of a couple of different traits to make it want to throw roots. One, it's genetic traits, like I was showing you on that cross. It tries to throw roots all up and down the plant. It's crazy, but that's the trait I'm breeding for. On the other side of that, it's got at least some desire, you know, on top of that desire, giving it the ability to not only get really, really saturated wet, but then we know it's going to be able to dry out because of the air pot. So I think between it feeling, you know, darkness, that moisture, then the dry cycle, you're giving it all the triggers it needs to know, oh crap, I got to throw roots if I want to live.
Quick question: did the poll results come up on chat for everybody when they come up? When the poll closes, do you see the results? I'm just wondering, is it only showing it for me? I don't know.
I saw it.
Okay, cool. So you see the end results where it says how many. Yeah, I just want to make sure, because that's part of the idea, is trying to think some. Oh, I see that. This has caused an interesting discussion going on in chat there around the whole idea of whether it's. I think it's one of those. It's yeah. To me, it would be interesting to try. The same way, I still think there's a way of being able to do a plant that you could put in a lazy Susan and just have like 4 branches sticking into the flowering chamber, let them flower, harvest them, rotate it, have another 4 branches that were vegging, go into the flowering chamber and do it like that.
Okay? Only one way to know. Got to do the experiments.
Yeah,
Got to do it.
you
Yeah,
can move
that's
somewhere where
my
it's
problem.
easier to do it.
I can't stop doing stuff. I have a weird compulsion.
Yeah, no. But yeah, and anything else? Anybody else interesting happening in the in the grow space at the moment in chat as well, and I haven't seen anything for a while. I mean, LEDs again are just taking off all over the place. It almost seems as though, yeah, the day of the HID light is numbered. It really is. Yeah, you can see Pip Jams in chat. Evening
I think
Pip
it's
Jam.
been numbered, and they know it.
Mm.
They've known it. They've known that dinosaurs knew when they were dinosauring.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
And
a
that's, yeah, sorry, go.
there's a really good podcast, I believe it was on Dude Grows, where they had Grow Mao, who's actually working for HLG now. And then they had the owner of HLG on there, and they were going over some of the numbers and kind of the future of LEDs. And it was good. It was a good little excerpt. You guys should catch it if you got half hour to
Yeah, it was
listen.
a good one.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting, because they brought up some interesting points there. Because what the theoretic, like the output from the light, the usable output, the UMOL output that you want to get out of the light, and what the theoretical maximum is that you can get out of an LED.
5
thing
is
is what-
100, and like we're aiming for 4, and then
Yeah, like
it's-
4
once we
is
get
the
to that, it's
theoretical.
like,
Yeah, I think like 4 is the theoretical maximum that you can achieve. And the upticks, as they were describing it, and I am like just almost just quoting them on this sort of paragraph, maybe. But yeah, it's like the difference. He said like the like top drag cars, when you're going from an 8-second quarter mile to a 7-second quarter mile, there's a bit of a jump. It's not a small jump, and then from 7 to 6 is an even bigger jump, and so it goes. The closer you get to the 0 or the most efficiency level, the more difficult it gets. But that's this whole UMOL bit. I mean, that's actually the bit that everybody needs to be looking up on the lights. They're not, you should stop looking at wattage. That's not of any real interest. It's how, because if you know how much light you need, what the wattage doesn't mean anything. It's you're going to have to use whatever you need to use. That's what I mean by it doesn't mean anything. It's like you don't have a choice. You need X number of, X light intensity. And there you see that perfect. And as the efficiency of the LEDs go up, their wattage will go down. I mean, you see that most beautifully exampled with the head lighting. That 1,000-watt HPS, you need 1,000 watts. Its efficiency level means you need to get the same amount of usable light that 600-watt LED is producing. You need to pump in an extra 400 watts of energy to do it. It's not that efficient. And so the lighting will get more efficient and the power requirements will come down.
yeah, I love my LEDs. Even though I run pre-CXP 3590s, which are just chip-on boards, they still put out weight. I'm just fine using them, and it's been around. It's coming up on 4 years that I've been using them. So it's about that time where in a year or so, it's exactly where I wanted to be. And I bought it from a company called Timber Grow Lights. They're San Diego based. I really liked everything that was set up with them. What I really liked about them too is they had I set myself up with a 5-year warranty. So that's where I was like, I'll use this for 5 years. We'll see where we're all at with the technology, and it's skyrocketed. So with my veg tent, I got a HLG Samsung 301B board. Love it. It's doing great. But with my other tent, I'll still be using my Timber, like the substrate and the heat sinks. I'm keeping all that. The only thing I'll probably have to change is the power source, so my mean wheel driver, and the light diodes themselves. I'll have to put new diodes, and possibly because they're on separate 90-pin heat sinks, I might choose separate ones, or I might see if I can combine it all. I'll have to talk to some friends that know a lot more about, like, have built a lot more LEDs than I have. I've only built one, and I've bought one, so we'll see where it'll all be. In a year,
And I
that'll
was-
definitely be replaced.
I was taking the other week. I was actually going through down at the local Home Depot hardware store spot, picking up some new fluorescent tubes for the garage. But when I'm walking through and suddenly seeing all of the LED, fluorescent tube replacement, T5, etc., replacement lighting that's sitting there. And to be honest, I was looking at going, my goodness, that's cheap. Hey? Compared to what we're paying in a grocery store for these lights, this is a fraction of the price. And you're
Mhm.
thinking for a home grower, and you can they do the spectrums, they got 4.5, 3.5, you've got all these different ones, so you can mix and match if you want to. And they little ones, short ones, long ones, they've got every selection under the sun that you'd want. And I reckon you could actually put together a pretty decent, almost light box to grow in.
Yeah.
Using those lights, and you would get a pretty damn reasonable grow. I mean, I'm looking because you could just run them at those long ones, but just put them vertically inside the grow space as well, all down the walls.
Well, that's actually what I'm doing something in my veg tent to get more space. I'm gonna be incorporating a shelving unit, just a metal shelving unit, because I want to clean it. And I really like that it can hold more weight as well. So if I need it, I have that like just all set up. So yeah, every single shelf is gonna have a light, just like, a T5 replacement. And
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. That's just how I'm going to stack it up. That'll be for my cuttings. That'll be for my cuttings to establish, and then for them to grow up a little bit, and then we'll see where it goes from there. I'll have all the space I need within that 3x3 space, and I'll still be growing my the next stage in their transition, where they'll go up to 1 gallons. Then for the 3 gallons, I might just move it to another tent. We'll see how that goes. I only have so much space, but integrating vertical space, definitely a good idea. Instead of it all being on the floor, it can be on the side and some on the floor as well. The majority of that volume will be on the floor. But yeah, having a little bit on the side, no problem. And that's just going to cost me $55. I'm also looking at restaurants too. A lot of restaurants have stuff that they're trying to get rid of. So just reuse, recycle. If you can, you'll probably get a better deal for it. And they might even just give it to you. So yeah, keep that in mind. Always keep an eye out for some shelving units. They're useful in mycology and horticulture. Take advantage of what's around you. Just make sure to scrub it down. If it has some rust, take off that rust and maybe even give it a nice new coat of paint.
Yeah.
If
I mean, it's interesting. I was just reading back to some of the comments in chat and that, and I think it was Small Tubes mentioning to me, what kind of new developments are we seeing in the market, and saying the only real new thing you're seeing anything about these days is lights. And I think that's starting to reach that upper end of the curve. You're not going to see any real big advancements happening in that now. The next thing I suspect will be spectrum tuning will become the next big thing. You'll see LED light manufacturers are going to bring out, you can punch in whatever recipe for wherever you want to be in the world. Because it's all going to be about now all the little bells and whistles features to make their product more appealing than than the neighbor's product.
We got the efficiency up. Now let's really, it's just like with cars too. Like, oh yeah, we have the efficiency.
Even the most basic car suddenly has a shit ton of features in it.
Yeah. Well, you look at like a Mustang back then, and then you look at the modern cars now, and the modern cars, more horsepower, better braking, better steering, just because it's steering assistant. They might not look as cool. I mean, but you can also.
I mean, like over here, the bottom of the range, whatever brand new car off the lot has features that are not that dissimilar to what's sitting in the top of the range version of that car. It's just a little bit more refined. The finish is a bit more touched up. But overall, it's kind of exactly the same tech that's there and sitting there. It's just, it bleeds down, it trickles down eventually. But there's not that much more that can really be done.
Yeah, it's the same tech in a
Nutrients,
package that lets other
like-
people know you paid more for it and that you're cool. That's what it is. It's the same shit in a better package.
Become the rise of AI in this space.
I think if you look at every traditional business that's gone through these kind of changes, there's two methods of integration you see. There's vertical and horizontal, right? So first, you have people that go and buy their competitors, and that's horizontal. So they're just going sideways, trying to take everyone on their level and consolidate them into one business model so that they can, really exert the most flex they can as purchasing and sales prices, et cetera. Your other option is to integrate horizontally. Look at Costco. They're selling chicken, so they went to the point of buying their own chicken farms all the way down, so they've decided to go ahead and integrate from top to bottom. I think the same thing is going to happen in this space, and that's going to push design innovation, right? Now, I think in the future, and you can call me crazy, you're going to have a tent that doesn't need a light. You're going to have a tent that basically has the LEDs on the fabric, and you just simply tell which LEDs you want and what spectrums at what time and at what height. And your light is going to be literally on the fabric of your tent, shining from the fabric in. And that's going to be your light source. No longer is it going to be a light source from the top, because you've already seen, we've already incorporated LEDs into fabrics, things like that. So it's just a matter of time before that vertical integration allows for the technology to basically take the light from being a light source on the top, and it basically just becomes the walls of the tent.
Yeah, so almost like I was going to say, like not bioluminescence, but like fabric luminescence, where the whole you plug the tent in, and the whole thing just goes and glows.
Right. Or you just use an aluminum
no...
fabric, and you lay current LEDs into a fabric rather than into a solid panel. You just keep them at a low wattage, so the heat generation now is all around the tent.
Yep.
That's the next innovation. Having a tent that is a light and a light that is a tent.
Whoa, dude.
If anybody makes any money on that, I get a cut. Just putting that out there right now. Anybody out there runs with that, I get a cut.
Kind of blue dream.
Should have put it as a third option, both in the poll, but I didn't. Oh well. And sit on the fence. Choose one or the other.
And I will recommend anyone who hasn't tried it, try air layering. It's well worth it. It's a good technique. It doesn't take any additional money or any additional equipment other than what you probably already have laying around your house somewhere. It takes no extra space. I really recommend it. If anyone hasn't tried it, try it. Because so far, between all the different methods of cloning that I've been experimenting with, this by far is probably my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much more sense. It's nothing new, but yeah, it makes way more sense than having to buy hormones, having to buy a special substrate just for that, or the way you're doing it. You don't have to buy anything fucking special or anything extra, like more sphagnum peat moss or more riot cubes, whatever
The cloth is reusable.
Choice. The cloth is reusable. You can just wash it out, clean it out.
You don't would work with the chilies. I'm sorry. Just,
yeah.
I was thinking I'd like to. Yeah, I want to keep the hot lemon going. Actually, I had one the other day, and it was like, oh yeah, this is nice. I want.
Wait a minute. I thought you said peppers are. Maybe I got this wrong because I've never really grown or gotten into chilies. So maybe you can educate me right here. I thought you said they are basically similar to an autoflower in that they have a set time. Basically, they're going to live from. They don't use light for flowering or anything like that. They're not sclerotropic. Okay.
For flowering, for maturity, they reach a certain maturity and then they'll start flowering, and then they'll go through. They're not annuals; they're perennials. You can keep them going.
Yeah, they won't senesce after they're flowering.
That's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you. I think that's where I got confused the way we were talking about it. Thank you. So the perennials, they're not annuals.
They're only annuals
Thank
because
you.
if you leave them outside and it drops below 0,
Yeah.
it's
die.
game over.
But if you got a greenhouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, this makes a lot more. This is why I
Conservatory.
got confused when we were talking about, because I know the terms annual and perennial, but we never use them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because this
thank
isn't this one, cannabis has a life cycle of once it's flowered, that's it, and gone to seed, that's it. Doesn't have to do anything else. Yeah.
I've got
But
100
Yeah.
the chilies will
black
keep
pepper.
going.
we can keep it
Yeah.
going though. It's much like peppers, but
Yeah.
there's going to be
That's
that
good.
transitional period where it has to adjust its hormone levels. Like for anyone that's not familiar with keeping moms, takes a while, a month or two, depending on the variety you have. And it depends on how healthy you had it too, and how much you cut off. So there's a couple of different variables in there, but you could definitely keep one going. But I wouldn't do, I wouldn't keep a mother going more than just one run myself. I would just take a cutting from that mother once it's re-vegged. And once I know I have something, viable that's rooted and established, okay, at
Mm.
least have 2 backups for that backup.
Yeah.
Plank out. Plank out.
Yeah. Well, you can get around the plant count with
that's
air
it.
layering.
Yeah. That's a really interesting
There
one.
you freaking
'cause you've
go.
got-
Okay,
Someone
so
was
you
saying,
see-
"Oh yeah, you got
So
all
you see
these
part of
cuttings.
my
I'd rather
method to
do
my
it."
madness.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah. It's all still one
Yeah,
plant.
someone was saying with cuttings, like, "Oh yeah, well I just do that." And then you could also take into consideration that those are not plants until they are rooted
In the
by
ground.
certain. Yeah, well, just
Well, as
rooted
separate
in
plants because they've got roots, but yeah, they'd have to be
No, I'm
as a
talking about
separate
with
plant.
cuttings.
Oh, with cuttings,
But
they're not
with on
considered
the air
plants.
layering, that's just one.
Yeah, it's
You
still just
can't
one
say
plant.
like it has
yeah.
roots on the plant that it's a separate plant. Not yet. So
So long as you
that's a
layer
good
it on
little
the
runaround.
plant and don't have it going into another pot, potentially that would be there. Yeah, I'll bet. Oh, there's a great legal loophole there.
Yeah.
You make
Add
yourself a
that
bed the
to
size
another
of your
legal-
basement, and then you add a couple of plants, and then you just start training it like a sea serpent all around your basement.
And you can provide all the rooted cuttings for everyone.
Like, wow, there's a lot of plants in here. It's like, no, just one.
One
What are you
plant.
talking about?
Just like a Loch Ness monster, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. That'd be awesome. God, I want to see that someday.
Well, it just kind of goes back to the grafting. You could have like 2 moms with like 8 strains
Mhm.
grafted on each plant and have 16 plants essentially in your little quorum,
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be the first one that has to try that legal defense in court, but I'm certainly would be interested in watching it.
Yeah. Right.
Well, it's funny because I did run into that, just what you're talking about, Lefty, again, reading through Robert Connell Clark's book. It's pretty interesting, man. If you go back and check that book, it's an old ass book, but he covers so many of the things that we're all talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it is
Yeah,
a very good book.
Establish horticultural methods. That's why you learn about horticulture. And don't just read on whatever site. It's already been learned. So just follow those methods, you'll be fine. And then you'll actually learn a lot more along the way too. Just
Well, and
study what people have already looked into.
And when he brings up grafting, the way he shows to do it is to take, like we would think of grafting like a tree where you cut a branch off, put it on another branch, you tape it up and try to get it to take. His method of grafting for herbaceous plants in that book is to literally have 3 plants planted side by side of different varieties. You cross the meristems, you score them up, tape them together, and that's how you create your graft. So you literally have them growing as 3 plants, you cross them together, you force them together with a binding, and then you wait for them to graft together before you remove them from the ground. That was really, because most of us think of it like trees. Oh, you'll take a cutting from one, you'll cut the branch off another one to try to replace it with that. And I guess that works for woods like hardwood and softwood. But when it comes to herbaceous plants, you actually typically leave, this is how Robert Connell Clark showed me do it. You leave them on separate rootstocks, but then you cross them, bind them, and that causes them to grow together very quickly.
Mm, mm.
And then you kill 2 of the 3 root systems.
I mean, I've been seeing lately where people have been grafting, cannabis stalks onto other plants, just a healthy root stalk, not even a cannabis stalk itself. I can't remember the example. Well, let's just say a tomato plant. They're just taking a healthy tomato plant, grafting, into the stalk of the tomato plant with the cannabis plant and letting it go. And it's just like basically you just are looking for a healthy rootstock.
Mm, mm.
I can't remember where I saw that or heard that, but yeah,
Well, it
just
used
recently I came across it.
Yeah, that used to get done and still gets done with hop vines. Well, vines. They're not vines, they're vines. But yeah, just because they're both Cannabaceae, they both produce they both produce their own kind of trichome, their own kind of oil glands. So yeah, it's pretty neat idea. I like that. The tomato.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of different, just being able to graft onto a completely different plant. Completely
Yeah,
different.
because you usually hear about like the same species, like hemp, but no, that's or hops. But man, that's awesome on tomato. Because so
Yeah.
many of us can just grow tomatoes all year round, not worry about it.
And that would be interesting to see if the different rootstocks could give you with this. Okay, so take from the same stock mother cannabis plant, take cuts from that you graft onto different rootstocks of different, let's say a pepper, a tomato, I'm just coming up with random things.
Yeah.
And grow them all in the same bed, nutrient, whatever it is that they're in. But to see if the different rootstocks also result in different end product, given that they might be tuned to be taking up slightly different nutrients in different ways and things like that. Does that make sense? Or I mean, it's just
No, absolutely. Different plants don't search for nutrients the same. Some are going to be real deep rooted, some are going to be real shallow rooted. You might graft onto something that's shallow rooted, and that plant doesn't like to be shallow rooted. Maybe it's a real miner for looking for different types of micronutrients or some that aren't available at the surface. Or it could bring in a whole lot of shit. That'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah.
The same,
I
the
see,
same plant, you cut off the same plant and graft it onto different rootstocks. That'd be amazing. That'd be a really cool experiment. Why don't you get on that, GMF?
Thanks, Lefty. That's just what I need. Thanks, Lefty.
Yeah,
I'm already at 3 a.m. going, I got to finish this experiment. I need room
Just
to do
another one. Yeah, exactly.
What's one more?
Hey, Magma. I was just like, so, I see there are some comments in chat like about what's the practicality of stuff like this, but I think there's no practicality to this. This is purely a thought experiment in terms of this is what home growers. This would be the difference between the home grower culture mindset and the big corporate. This is what you can play with at home because you're not trying to do this on scale. It's for the fuck of it.
50,000 times, on so much acreage. You're doing.
That's why homebrewers can come up with
specific
beers
plants.
that big people could never come up with because we work on a scale they never could. So as a result, we have the freedom to be creative and to think and work in ways they never will.
And really, in actuality, the different rootstocks with the cannabis, it says for ha-has, but the grafting, especially in a state with plant counts. I got a 4 plant count limit here. So, if I had 2 moms grafted with, 8 strains on each one, well, all of a sudden I have 16 moms. Essentially, I have 16 moms, and it's only 2 plants. So when you're ready to do a run, you take that one or you take 2 cuts or whatever, and you got your 4, and you can keep switching it up and just keep those 2 moms alive, and you don't have that issue with your plant count. So it's very useful. If you take advantage of it, it could be very useful, the whole grafting thing.
Yeah, and even for outdoor growers, it can be useful if you don't have access to the mothers and you don't want to do like clones in your house. You can still get your selection done just by air layering them, checking on that they have water through the cycle, and that can save people time and space.
Brilliant. We didn't even talk about the advantages of doing it outdoors, Magma. That is, you are so spot on, dude.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, 'cause
that's
that-
how I used it the first time. I was in a situation where I couldn't do clones because I didn't have any space for it.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I was just about to say, not practical. Well, for what situation?
I'm
Not
talking
everyone
about
has
like
your
grafting
situation.
onto multiple rootstocks, for example. That's not necessary. I can see
No.
that air layering is definitely one that has a significant practical element to it. But yeah, like I'm talking about like the experiments of let's graft this onto a watermelon rootstock and see what happens, just for shits and giggles. It's
Hey,
literally
if it comes
that.
out
It's for
tasting like
shits
watermelons,
and
it'll be worth it.
giggles.
If it comes out tasting fantastic, it'll totally be worth it.
Yeah. But it's that same kind of thing, like, peanut butter and pickled herring. Only certain minds that decide to put those combinations together. Yeah. Well, didn't mean to kill the conversation on that one.
I don't know. Well, I'm curious. What's
How's
new
it
with
going,
you, Magma?
Magma?
What you breeding, bro? What's new and exciting in your neck of the woods?
I think I'm most excited about my Afghan at the moment, the bulk. That one's the strongest on the nose, I would say.
Yeah. So what's the snake like?
It's kind of hard to put the right words on it, but it's like this misty, musky funk.
Ooh,
But it has
musky.
a bunch of tones in it that I really can't. It's hard to place them.
Neat.
Like where in the smelling thing they are because it's not like a fruit or anything typical. I would have to dig a bit to know exactly what that smell is.
And are you doing a preservation run with this, or is this something you're hybridizing? What are you doing with it?
I'm just looking through them now to find the keepers, and I'm separating the males. So they're probably not going to be used for anything until like next round.
Oh, so you're really early on in the process of working with this.
Yeah, this is just like a bunch of moms that are now going into testing. So with a bunch of other stuff. So like early in, they're the ones standing out, and I'm still doing a bunch of sativa testing at the moment, like second round, and yeah, I'm really happy with the results so far, and most of that too.
I love the way you're talking about the scale of time that you're doing things on. Because I mean, props on you for doing this stuff right and taking the time to actually do it. Because that's awesome.
Yeah, no, hopefully it's not the race.
It's a great way to put it.
Magma, you said that was a hash plant you're working on?
Yeah, I am, and like the Sunshine 4, I have with the 88G13 hash plant, and then I have the 88G13 hash plant on its own, and like the Sunshine 4 put on a big stretch on it, so I can see the influence from that one. So like many people say, when you cross it with anything, it just goes and turns like to the hash plant, and I don't see that in the Sunshine 4 cross. So
Nice.
I think it's really, really nice and stocky, and reminds me of like the Sensi Seeds stock, like early 2000s that had friends growing. So I'm definitely excited for that. Really, really small and stocky plants.
That's so interesting that you say that you're noticing something that bucks the trend you always hear, that everything you breed with X becomes X. Because I've heard that a lot too with the deep chunk I'm working with, and I'm finding I think maybe it's about, if you slap it on a polyhybrid, yes, it becomes X. Whatever it is that is that strong of, I wouldn't say strong, is that solid of a solid of a genetic profile, I guess you call it, or dominant. I think it just has to find something on the other side that is just as solid. I think you can't smash it on height because then yes, it absolutely becomes, some polyhybrid will absolutely, I think, become whatever that dominant strain is. But yeah, I'm noticing that too. I've slapped my deep chunk on a couple of them and they're not coming out like deep chunk clones, which I really like.
Yeah, so it could be that you probably have like a strong expression from one of the parentals in your pheno that you selected, and that's probably coming through then, because like if you have a polyhybrid with no clear dominance, you could be seeing like a cross that's going all different directions. But I think if you have a more stable cross, it should have a stronger effect depending on how they match, and how they pair.
Interesting one to see on the poll in chat, which is a fairly even split between seeds and cuttings as to what people mostly
Which
grow.
makes sense. I mean, for those people that don't have access to cuttings, maybe they don't know anyone, they're not around any dispensaries. They have an easier chance of getting some seeds. And then also too, you can introduce a lot more variability with that, while some people are more prone to like, like we'll say a random person has, he started off with his friends, all knowing what to do. They all just told him, hey, put ABC, follow this method, you'll do just fine. And I'll even give you a couple cuts to start. You don't have to worry about anything. And then they're still there. They're in that group where maybe another person is the one that's getting the new genetics, from seed. And then they're taking the cuttings and then supplying everyone through that too. So there's a lot of variability.
I tell you what, though, there's nothing that's going to beat a seeded plant's roots. Take it from somebody who had to get rid of some plants this week. Yeah, you could definitely tell the difference in the root systems between a clone and a seeded plant. By far.
Very aggressive.
You can tell a big difference also between the insects they bring in.
Well, taproot. There's no taproot on a cutting.
Right, and it's shallow roots. It's almost like a pan with a clone. I mean, unlimited root space too, and it stopped. I mean, it did what it wanted to do, and it stopped to where the seeded plants with the taproot.
So okay. So then you're talking. Okay, so the idea of grafting onto a rootstock. What happens to the plant when you? I mean, like the idea of being able to have this really big. You grew it from seed out, nice big established cannabis rootstock. You graft one plant on, flower that piece off, and while that bit's flowering, graft another one on that can still take advantage then of this big rootstock. I mean, I know it's an overly complex, not necessarily practical, but you see what I mean?
Actually, that's what we do with apples. That's what we do with citrus. So some people might not say practical. Well, guess what? This is done in an industrial scale.
No, but I mean, it's not practical in cannabis because you have to force this damn thing to flower and then try and keep it alive. It's a annual, not a perennial. So that's the
the rate of growth.
Get continuous flowering. I think you'd be able to get continuous flowering.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've heard
conditions.
I've heard and I've seen it myself that you have plants that are vegetating on one side and in full flower on the other side.
Yeah, so that's the idea I have with rotating it through and doing like 4 branches and flower while 4 veg, and then flip it around and then just keep doing that. Yeah, that
works. It's not maybe all varieties are going to be able to do that because some are more photoperiod sensitive. But I definitely seen it.
Well, and that gives you a big reason.
No, go ahead, GMF. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that gives you a big reason to look at a landrace, super long flowering plant, one that doesn't naturally senesce. You want that rootstock that's just going to want to stay healthy for a long time. So maybe that's really
the Indian
reason.
stuff. Indian stuff is really good for that because it hardly goes into flowering unless you get like 12 hours or less. It's fucking pain.
Right. Use that as your rootstock, something that's going to be super adapted to the area and that's going to be on a naturally long cycle anyway. And now start grafting your Afghan onto it and see how quick you can pull a branch off.
And not just that, having a rootstock that's already not just adapted to the area, but is pest and disease resistant. So
That's
something
what
that
I was, yeah. That's what I was
Okay,
gonna bring up. You know, what if you had something that had, you know, hop latent virus or, you know, one of these tobacco mosaic viruses, and you took a, you know, your cleanest cut off of a plant and just started grafting and then taking something off of that and then grafting it onto these healthier root stalks. You think you could outrun it? I mean, obviously, you know, those diseases are systemic, they're in the cells. But do you think if you just kept
No.
rejuvenating it
No.
on healthy root stock?
No, you can't outrun a virus, dude. You can't. I don't know.
No,
Once it's in the
unfortunately,
plant-
the
well,
only
they'll be
way
in the tissue.
Tissue
the only way of
culture.
doing it is with tissue culture,
Right.
clean meristem tissue
Exactamundo.
culture is the only way you can do it. Yeah.
Because you're getting the newest tip growth
Mhm.
that will
Right.
not have it. But if you catch it in time, obviously, then the transfer won't
It could
be
be-
all the way. Magma?
It could be
Yeah.
really cool if you had like the pot standing outside 2 tents and you had one in veg and one in flowering, and then you just had like the branches going in through the walls rather than so they had like
Well-
a common pot but 2 different growing areas.
And I think a friend of ours did show us, a friend of the neighborhoods did show us someone who had done something very similar. They had a tent that had a vegetative plant and they fed 2 branches or 3 branches through a wall to a flowering tent and then scrogged that up the wall and flowered that out. And yes, you can have a plant that is simultaneously, we've seen it. You can have a plant that is simultaneously in flower and in veg. It's purely something that's happening not at the root level, but at the branch level.
So that's a good way to keep the plant count.
Absolutely.
I see Dan in chat, hey Dan mentioning about keeping a strain for over a year, taking dedication. I mean, in that terms, I guess of keeping. So this comes down to the thing like with mother plants, because keeping a strain. If you just keep taking cuttings from your mother plant, and then every second run, you just turn one of the cuttings into a new mother plant, and you just keep doing that. That's probably the probably the easiest way of keeping it going. And then you can often then just pick the healthiest of your cuttings from a run and just turn that one into the next mother plant, flower out the mother that you had going, because root boundness becomes a serious issue. Although you can cut the roots, you can go in and hack the roots up and get them going again.
Yeah, well, that's root pruning, like that we just like GMF does. He used the fabric pots. That's actively air pruning. So same kind of concept, but much more aggressive. It's like cutting into the tissue while with the air pruning, you're just stopping that and then making it branch out some more. I've had really good results in my 65-gallon pot, so can't really complain there.
Yeah, no, precisely. But I found that was the big thing with keeping plants going for a while. Yeah, you just got to get into recycling. You can keep them like little topiaries, like little bonsai plants then. Yeah. I can see. So what's the final result? So C just narrowly outperforming cuttings at the final bell was 42.57, so 42.58. I don't know how the fuck gets 57. It could add up to 100 numbskulls. I always thought Google will be better at that fucking thing. That explains a lot. But yeah, that's. I did think it would be more dominant in one direction. I didn't think it would be such a closely run. And interesting, for instance, Phil Mitchell this mentioning that his assumption would be like Americans would probably be more into cuttings than seeds. I guess what would be the real question is, what did people first start with? You know, what was the first thing you grew? Was the first plant you grew from cutting, was the first plant you grew from seed? And let's say cannabis, the first cannabis plant you grew, was that from cutting or was that from seed? That would be a bit more, that would be, now let's put that as a poll. That'd be a bit more interesting to see.
Yeah, I grew mine from a clone. My first big harvest. It's a
I
new
think the
Jack
clone,
Herer.
yeah, I think people grow from clone more probably in Europe than what they do here. Just
Yeah.
because of space.
Well, it depends where you're at, really.
Hmm.
What country? I think some
Circumstances
countries it's
again.
much easier. Yeah.
But then when it's prohibition, what is plant count?
Right.
Yeah,
And I think in
yeah, so-
Some plant count is
cities and
zero.
Fuck, you're
Like
fucked, yeah.
perpetual says, like it's like no, none.
Yeah,
So,
but you know what I
that
mean?
point-
But you know, when it's illegal, one plant's the same as 100. You know what I mean? It's not like
Right,
you have a
right.
plant count restriction all of a sudden.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, if you're screwed, you're screwed.
Well,
Yeah,
and you
it's
have to
like up
gamble on a
100.
you have to gamble on a different level with security. Like, my first plants were all from seed because that's
Mhm.
what I had was, and so that's what we would do. And of course, since you're going from seed, you would have to, okay, we're gonna have to put out more, and then we're gonna have to call males and blah 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 blah. But you're doing it in farmers' fields, you're doing it in land that's not yours. So the biggest thing you're looking for is security more than anything else. And if you notice, there's been someone in your patch or something like that, you just abandon it. So that means, yeah, you got to say screw plant count. You got to plant more patches. You got to plant them more remotely, and hope that in that one or two of them escape scrutiny. And that was, I think, the real difficulty of running in prohibition times is everything is artificially influenced by this cat and mouse game you're playing.
Does it therefore change now with legalization that you would see, and I'm just doing this as a point, just a thought idea, that you would suddenly see, the beginner grower would actually go down to the dispensary or wherever now and buy a rooted cutting of something they know that they're going to get to be able to
Absolutely.
walk away with that, and not grow it from seed because they know straight away it's like the starter pack plant, sort of, here you go. It's like going to the nursery and either buying the chili pepper that's already seeded and it's sort of, you can pick the healthy looking one, or here's the pack of seeds and have at it.
That's the story of the spider mite.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but every time I taught someone to grow, it's usually because they were sick and they needed medicine. So it was, I'd give them clones to get them started of whatever I was growing. And then I would purposely give them seeds. That's why I first even made seeds, because people kept asking, okay, well, I don't want to learn how to pop seeds on expensive stuff I bought. So I started making seeds just to give them some healthy seeds and say, here, take these 50 seeds and practice popping seeds with them till you feel comfortable.
Right.
And that some of those plants ended up being really awesome to keep, but it was more about giving them a clone to get them started so they can get their garden up and running immediately, but then giving them the seeds to practice on. Because I think a lot of people get nervous around that, seed popping. A lot of people don't, I think because not everybody understands the right level of moisture, light, heat, etc. It becomes a very, I just do it by rote memory thing rather than understanding why some seeds work and some don't.
Yeah, I used to do a clone club back in the days with a bunch of people, and that really helped all the new growers get access to clones from all of the growers that already had a bunch of stock. We kind of brought like a bunch of clones every time, and those were just put in like a lottery and given away.
So what was there like? Let's say you were one of the people putting in stock, to get away. Are you getting anything back for that? Is it something?
Yeah, we were
you
sharing
get
with
more
each other.
clones
So
for
like,
that, more access to like newer stuff. Does everyone has the same access of everything, or is there?
yeah, pretty much everyone in the club had the same access, and then we would bring like our selected moms that we had, and we just share them, and we bring some flowers, and we'd share that, and we'd throw some flower in, and we'd have like a jackpot or like lottery, and people get to taste all the different varieties. And like if something you really like, you either get the clone or arrange to get it next time. So yeah, I think that was really good.
Yeah, I
Yeah, that's
like the
brilliant.
idea of sharing and having a way for everyone to have access to everything. The one.
Yeah, and there was no money there involved. It was all free. There was
Okay.
like no
Dude, that's
payment.
brilliant.
Oh,
That's
so no one's
genius. We
making
need
money,
that.
so you just come in and provide clones when you can. Let's say if you're just starting off, and it's on I'm backing you up, or you're backing me up, like I need some plants and you're already established in the club. And so
Yeah,
you're
we did
saying,
like a cannabis normal organization, and we did it there. So it was like members and everybody they knew.
Well, dude, you just tied together exactly the thing that's got to be led to. Like, this is how we normalize it. This is how we make it accessible to people. This is how we get more people involved. Give away our.
Yeah, no, this was a good way, you know, because I had a bunch of friends that came all the time, and they were like, they didn't grow, and I was like, just come to the club. We'll get your clones. You can ask people what you need for your setup, and you'll get like a contact, you know, a mentor or something like that. And I think it did wonders.
Dude, that's brilliant.
That's definitely going to be, yeah, that knowledge exchange. This is what I've got. This is your helping. Yeah, that'll be the tech revolution coming.
I love it. Great idea. But I've always been a teach a man to fish, don't give the man a fish kind of guy.
Man,
Oh,
if
yeah,
fish,
no,
give him
but
the
they
first
had
and you'll
round
buy
fish while you
1,000
teach him.
rods.
No, that's no, like you guys are saying, that's an awesome thing that, you know, especially to get new growers growing.
Well, and
'Cause
that's what we
popping-
need.
Yeah, and popping seeds can get frustrating too. So I mean, that's definitely a good kick in the pants to get somebody, you know, down the road, is to give them a good healthy cut, you know, something that's been established. You know, it doesn't have to be
proven
elite.
winner.
Yeah, it's a proven winner. You know, they're gonna grow something and it's gonna be fucking awesome.
Yeah, you're gonna have a
So-
win your first time. You don't have to worry
Yeah.
about failing. You invested
Right.
so much money. Maybe that was their last dollar.
Right.
that-
Yeah, and it was
that's
a
all they
good
have.
way to get. It was a good way to get people off like all the import goods too,
Right.
because it was a bunch of assholes doing all the import, and some of them just
Taking
needed
advantage.
some competition, you know, to get back on point.
Yeah.
The one issue I really see with all of that is if something goes wrong and you're transferring whatever pest, disease, virus, that's the one thing. So for those clubs that are out there are tests. out
Yeah, and
there.
they can
So
do
maybe
like
you all invest $5 each to join the club, and that goes to things like that where you're testing the genetics before you're distributing to everyone. So I don't mind. I would pay $20 a year or whatever, just to know that I'm getting something clean, and even test yourselves too. You should all be responsible for what you're getting. And, you know,
Yeah, and
isolate
you
it.
can use
Hmm?
you can use wettable sulfur too after you get the clones if
Yeah.
you're worried, and you can clean it up.
Have a clone dip at the front door of the club.
There you go.
Uh,
I was just about to say, make it part of the responsibility of
You
when
just
you bring it in
instantly
the
get
door, just dip 'em.
deloused.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
give them a dip.
That's part of it.
Well,
Yeah,
and I
some
think
good
this is-
SOPs are needed.
Exactly.
from what I'm-
Exactly.
From what I'm hearing from Magma, the valuable part of this was really it made a space where you could get a mentor. It made a space where you could see how other people make it successful. And that's the important thing. That's, you know, if we want our community to be more accepted, if we want us to go mainstream and actually be normalized, we need to, you know, give more handouts. You know, they're not hand ups, we're handing out information. You're not, you know, giving people anything other than what's fair if you're giving them the information that's in your head, because you learned it from someone else.
And I've
Yeah,
been
and
trying.
there was no strings attached either, you know.
Yeah, I like that.
I've been trying to figure out how to get some things rolling around here, you know, with the new, you know, legalization in the state this year. There's a cannabis club that just popped up in town. You know, these are some really good ideas, you know, like the clone club, stuff like that. You know, just get people, like you said, just get people used to it and normalize it.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, and suddenly you start sharing flowers between, and it's a closed loop circle, you know.
right. I live in a huge, you know, winery and craft brew region, huge. and everybody's just kind of into that around here, and it's really taken off. I mean, the cannabis scene's really taken off here in the last 3 months. So yeah, it's good to hear some of these different ideas that you guys are throwing out.
Yeah, and this we were doing back in 2006, 2005.
Well, and my compliments, Magma, because you're like you said, it disrupts the profiteering system that people use. It really gives people more autonomy to grow their own stuff. They don't have to be held captive to, like you said, some people who were not behaving well and needed to be reminded to get on point. I think that's excellent, because the more you share information, the more you raise the bar for everyone as far as standards.
I think it's a win-win. It's a win-win.
Yeah, and I especially like maybe just putting in the $20 idea, because you can not just use that for testing, but new genetics to put into it. So maybe even take a poll between the whole group.
Yeah.
And just like how we are now, it's like, hey, what's the most interesting thing that you think is going to be beneficial to the most of us, to the
Right.
whole. And then you
That's
can
where the
keep
free
adding
clone
on
lottery
to
shows
the-
up.
Yeah, pack of the month. Everybody's
no.
going for the pack of the month, man. What do we want to buy? Yeah. All right, who's growing it this month? Everybody
Well-
gets cuts when it's ready.
That's funny you say that. My homebrew club, we do stuff like that. And that's part of the reason you pay. I literally pay $20 a year to be a member. And as a result, like, we'll get with a yeast company, and when they've got a new, like, the last thing is they had a new product coming out. It's a genetically modified yeast that will they got two versions of it. One only throws banana and one only throws strawberry. So we wanted to do some brewing with that as a club. So we got a hold of them, and we managed to get some ordered in through one of. So like, there's advantages to being a group that you can't, or doing like a cider buy.
all of a sudden that pack that you couldn't afford
Right.
by yourself is much
Is
more approachable as a
Right.
group.
Like, we'll go to an apple orchard and buy so many hundreds of gallons of cider, split it between a bunch of different members, and now we're all making a run of cider. So it's just stuff like that. There's power in being organized, I guess, is the point we're trying to make here, or especially places that aren't even legal yet. Organizing is really the first step, to getting the politics to change. Normalizing is the first step to getting politics to change.
Yeah, and lotteries can really fund it too. If people bring like some presents and some products they made and some extracts, throw that in the pot, people become really eager when they see what's on the table.
I like what you're thinking here, Magma.
Yeah, no, that was a cool thing for us, at least, because it was like a thing to look forward to. And the person that won the lottery always walked out super happy. So I think that was
Yeah.
cool.
No, that's always a nice when it all gets shared around like that. Well, on that note, we've been running a little longer than usual, but hey, good
Good combo.
conversation. And if you'd like to join us and carry on with the conversation, you can jump into the after show with us. I'll post a link up in a minute. So yeah, let's have a quick round of where everybody can find everybody, and starting with Lefty having just taken a drag there. Buddy, where can we all find you?
Lefty's Farm on Instagram and Lefty's Farm on Cannabis.
Excellent. And one of the two people talking off screen for Dave Martin's question in chat. GMF, where can people find you, buddy?
Oh, just holler at me on IG if anybody needs anything. Genetic Memory Farms. I'll usually be in the garden or in the kitchen, or doing something. But yeah, if I can be helpful, holler. And as per usual, thank you, Pete, for making this platform for the rest of us. I really appreciate that. It's always something I look forward to.
Yep.
So
Thank you very much.
And yeah, if anybody's available, catch us Mondays. Over on Operation Grow. We're always hanging out there too. Same usual suspects typically. So.
Mondays is the neighborhood grows, I believe.
I'm sorry. Yeah. No. I've been like that all day. I don't know what my problem is. Sorry, guys. Yes.
So many grows.
Thanks,
So
Pete.
many grows.
Too many grows. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Everywhere.
And Magma, where can we? where can we find you, buddy?
You can find me on IG and my name plus.com. And other than that, I'll be here on my volcano.
Good man. And then Raptor, sir, where can everybody find you, buddy?
Oh, great show, everyone. Really good conversation. I'm Raptor Grow. Find me on Instagram, Raptor Grow, all one word, all lowercase. You can also find me on Operation Grow, same time, same place with all the awesome people. And yeah, the Neighborhood Grow Show, Mondays, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern, and 12 a.m. UK time. So sorry to all the UK folks, but that is our time. And oh yeah, please check out Green Bicycles, GREAN. I got to have a good conversation with him on Friday. So yeah, it was a good one. Thank you all.
Excellent. No worries. And you can find me at Peel Grow Systems, also at Operation Grow 2019 on Instagram. So feel free to follow us there. And also, yeah, feel free to jump into the after show. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined us on in chat. You guys
I have one
make
more
the
thing
show.
I need to say.
Yep, go for it.
Peoples, take a few minutes, head over to the simpleseedco.com. You will find some very interesting things. I promise you.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, actually, I'll post that link
No
again
swindle.
in chat.
At a very
Seriously.
fair, at a very fair
Yeah.
price.
And I was just looking through it again the other day, and I'm one of those people that's like, I got too much stuff to work through. I want. Yeah, I'll be damned if there are at least 2 things on there I'm drooling about.
Yeah,
I'm
no, do
literally
take a look.
salivating.
There's some interesting things. There certainly are. So yeah, excellent, everyone. Join us in the after show. This can discuss that, find out more about the Simple Seed Co.